Hey YouTube, it's Eric. I'm gonna try to keep this video pretty quick. I'm just going to alert you to some facts if you're unaware of them. Just like the Western media, I just came across this recently. The Western media is completely silent on what is taking place in Cameroon. There's a active genocide being taken place by this kind of parallels the Rwandan genocide on how two different sects are fighting each other. In the Rwandan case, it was the Tutsis and the Hutus, but in Cameroon, it's the Francophones versus the Anglophones. But the current president, Paul Biya, the Francophones are the ones in power. That Paul Biya is he's been ruling Cameroon for like 40 years. I like some good articles, but all the elections have been rigged in Cameroon for the past like 30 years. This is the article here. Cameroon's Paul Biya gives a master class in fake democracy. But I'll show you here. Paul Biya, if you're not, he's been president since 1982. This guy's been in power since Ronald Reagan was in office in the United States. Just for some context, says here you see here Biya has the very close support of the Jesuit-trained Emmanuel Macron's government in France, and Paul Biya he has the support of the Vatican. He has the support of the United States. I'm going to show you while he's massacring English-speaking Cameroonians, British oil companies have gotten into billion-dollar deals with Paul Biya's government. Did you see here personal life? This is where Biya, this is add to the list of yet another Jesuit-trained tyrant, Paul Biya. Look where he went to school. Went to the Lycée Louis le Grand in Paris, founded in 1563 by the Jesuits. This was the College de Clermont, where actually the Jesuits wrote the first 25 degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. I recommend you check out the list of alumni at this school. The alumni list is huge. You'll see like 10 previous presidents of France, for instance. But Paul Biya, you see he's Jesuit trained, and you see there's a little bit on the Wikipedia here. But I linked some videos. There's all sorts of videos online. You see here in early 2017, videos and reports surfaced online that shows facts that a genocide was taking place in southern Cameroon, sanctioned and led by Paul Biya. Petition to the United Nations gave details of police raping students at a university. Supporters are calling for the independence of southern Cameroon. Yeah, so there's the southern English speakers have threatened to succeed. Now, I just think it's interesting. Paul Biya, like all Jesuit tyrants, has his own secret police force. Many allegations, and that being the Bataillon de Intervention Rapide. You see, it's a special force that reports directly to President Biya. Paul Biya has, like all dictators, like the personality cult is everywhere. Like his billboards of his face are all over Cameroon. We see here that Paul Biya's security forces have been many allegations of burning of villages, rape, and humiliating English-speaking citizens. Here's another article I recommend you guys check out here. This was done by The Guardian. Kind of just highlights the genocide taking place. I linked a few. This one here, this is interesting here. So, I mentioned how the genocide is taking place against the primary English-speaking Cameroonians. And just look at this. So, wow, so you'd think that the United Kingdom would have an obligation to help out the English-speaking Cameroon. Because Cameroon, was a British colony. But look at this. UK signs $1.5 billion trade deal with Paul Biya. This is June 2018. This is a year after the genocide reports come out. There's some photos of it right here. UK Trade Secretary Liam Fox has announced that the UK has secured a $1.5 billion trade deal and signed on $75 million in other trade agreements and a major boost for the UK economy after Brexit. So history repeats itself all over the time. Like, how many times have we seen in history where corporations and governments enable dictators to stay in power? Like, there's so many. You can write books on books on books. We have the London oil gas company called New Age, and the Cameroonian government agreed to the deal. Yeah, so I recommend you check that out. And interesting with Paul Biya, like he spends this was a report here. He spends 15% of his time outside of Cameroon as well. So he's never in Cameroon to begin with. See here, this source claims an investigation by the OCCRP, an anti-corruption NGO, showed that in 2006 and 2009, Biya spent a third of the year abroad. He spends a lot of his time at France, hanging out with the Jesuit-trained puppet Emmanuel Macron. Paul Biya also goes to the Vatican quite a bit. I'll show you. He went to see Pope Francis in 2017. Out of 35 years of Biya in office, the OCCRP makes the quote conservative estimate that he spent 4.5 of those years on private trips. And Paul Biya, he's always flying out while his people are starving. He's always flying out on private jets. I recommend you check this out. There's a little genocide taking place in South Cameroon. This documentary kind of goes into it here. Let me see if I'll show you the clip. There's a clip in this documentary. I don't know if you guys can hear my volume, but let's see if you can.
In early May,
this was interesting.
Was posted to Facebook. We've examined the footage.
You see that? These are for us, the civilians. That's in the United States. The Department of Homeland Security, which has been probably the most Jesuitically controlled organization since its inception, bought 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point bullets. So, but you see, Paul Biya is doing the exact same thing that the U.S. government is doing. See, these bullets, and these Cameroon is saying these are for us.
We've examined the footage.
So I'm saying check that out. And there's also I put some graphic footage in the show notes, also of footage on the ground of showing the genocide taking place in South Cameroon. And did you see the U.S. is like the U.S. cut off a little bit of aid to Paul Biya, but the U.S. ambassador has stressed that the Cameroon relations with the United States are good despite human rights concerns. I just want to point that out. This guy, he's the longest serving ruler that's not a royal, and he's a Jesuit puppet. He went to the Lycée Louis le Grand, and he has the full support of the Pope. I'll show you the where is that here? Actually, the Jesuit-trained Emmanuel Macron sent him a letter after the rigged election. Emmanuel Macron said that he was going to rule France like a Roman emperor. Look at this. Exactly what Paul Biya is doing. Look at this. Macron, I will govern like a Roman god. I should tell you that I think that statement speaks for itself. Okay, but you see, Macron is very supportive of Paul Biya, and I had the tab open here. Where was that? Yeah, here's the press release with that Paul Biya went to see the Pope Francis, the Jesuit-trained dictator Paul Biya went to see the Jesuit Pope with his wife Thursday, March 23rd, 2017. There's photos of it here. Doubtlessly getting the blessing for the murder taking place in his regime. Pope Francis took place in the massacres in Argentina in the 1970s. You can see photos of Pope Francis blessing the dictator, Jorge Vergela. I'll show you that photo on the internet. You can see a photo of Francis giving a wafer to Jorge Vergela. I have it even on my Instagram account, for instance. Let me see if I can just find this here. Here's a photo of them here. Pope, that looks like Francis on the left, Vergela, but there's a photo of him actually. Okay, here it is. There's Pope Francis on the left, and there is Vergela getting the wafer. Okay, right here on the left. Okay. Literally, because the House, like, I can't believe how spineless the British government is by signing a $1.5 billion trade deal. All these massacres are going on. I've seen the reports that there's already been like 20,000 killed in South Sudan with the Jesuit-trained Paul Biya's terror programs. But yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and no, I'm not. Actually, there's a long history in Africa with just it was the devout Catholic Leopold II who enacted one of the worst Holocausts in the human history in the Belgian Congo in the late 1800s. Again, that was the devout Roman Catholic King Leopold II. And Belgium has just been a spineless pawn of the Jesuits, really since like 1850, for quite a long time. But I recommend looking into, during the Rwandan genocide, it was the Belgians and the Vatican who like pinned the two tribes against each other. Just like they're going to be doing that in Cameroon too. And actually, here's an article here. Forgot to mention this. The Catholic bishops have already started doing that, just like they did in Rwanda by pinning the tribes against each other. Catholic bishops have already started to clash over genocide claims. So there's certain Catholic bishops who are supporting the Anglophones, certain Catholic bishops are supporting the Francophones, and it's creating more division and chaos in the country. But yeah, I recommend, like, it's sad, man, how the Vatican and Europe has just pillaged the African continent. But definitely, that you have to understand the Rwandan genocide, you have to know how it was the Vatican and the Belgians and the French who plot. Like, they said that the only differences between the Tutsis and the Hutus, they would say that the Tutsis had like a wider nose than the Hutus, and the Hutus were like just like a little bit darker. And just on super petty, stuff like that, the Vatican and Belgium were able to convince these people to massacre hundreds of thousands. But it's happening again in Cameroon with Jesuit-trained Paul Biya. So and the media is not talking about it at all. He's got the support of Macron's government. He's got the support of the Jesuit Pope, Jesuit-trained Macron. But yeah, there's been thousands of people who have died so far. He's signing billion-dollar. I'm pretty sure Paul Biya has like a $400 million net worth. Also, I'm pretty sure he's the richest man in Cameroon, on top of being a quote democratic leader for 40 years. But yeah, that's all for this one. Peace and love, YouTube. I'm Matt.